I wasn't invited to my brother's wedding, so I bought the honeymoon resort. Sometimes the greatest revenge is simply letting people see who they really are. Sometimes it's buying their dream vacation and watching their world crumble from the infinity pool. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated by your own family. My name is Vera Calloway. I am 32 years old, and I live in a penthouse overlooking Camden Point's Harbor District. The city sprawls beneath my floor-to-ceiling windows like a constellation of ambition and broken dreams, much like the family I was born into. Tonight, as I sip champagne that costs more than most people's monthly rent, I'm thinking about how profoundly satisfying it is to be underestimated. Most people see a woman in designer clothes with perfectly styled auburn hair and assume I inherited my wealth. They're wrong. I built Silverline Media from nothing, a one-woman PR firm that grew into the most influential marketing agency on the East Coast. My clients include Fortune 500 companies, A-list celebrities, and politicians who need their images scrubbed clean. I specialize in reputation management, which is ironic considering how spectacularly my own family managed to destroy their reputation with me. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning, or at least at the moment when everything changed. 3 months ago, I was sitting in my corner office at Silverline's headquarters in Millbrook Heights, reviewing a crisis communication strategy for a tech startup that had just gone public when my assistant buzzed in. "There's a woman here to see you," Lydia said through the intercom. "She says she's your stepmother." I hadn't seen Helena Calloway in 2 years, not since the last family gathering where she made it crystal clear that I would never truly belong to their perfect little unit. Helena had married my father when I was 15, bringing with her a son from her previous marriage, Marcus, who was 3 years younger than me, and who immediately became the golden child my father had apparently been waiting for his entire life. Helena walked into my office like she owned it, her blonde hair perfectly coiffed, wearing a Chanel suit that probably cost more than my first car. She'd always had expensive taste, though she'd never worked a day in her life. That had always been my father's job, providing for her and her precious son while I worked summers and weekends throughout high school and college, determined to never need anything from anyone. "Vera, darling," she said, air kissing near my cheeks. "You look wonderful. Success certainly suits you." I gestured for her to sit, maintaining the polite smile I'd perfected through years of client meetings with people I couldn't stand. "Helena, this is unexpected. What brings you to Camden Point?" "Oh, shopping, lunch with friends." She waved dismissively. "But I wanted to see you while I was in town. It's been too long." I waited. Helena never did anything without an agenda. "I have wonderful news," she continued, her smile brightening artificially. "Marcus is getting married. Can you believe it? Our little boy, all grown up." Marcus was 29, but Helena had never stopped referring to him as if he were still in diapers. The infantilization had only gotten worse as he'd stumbled through his 20s, dropping out of 3 different graduate programs and burning through a series of jobs that Daddy had arranged for him through business connections. "Congratulations," I said neutrally. "Who's the lucky woman?" "Isabel Morrison. You remember the Morrisons, don't you? They have that lovely estate in East Briar. Her father owns Morrison Industrial Group. Of course. A marriage that would benefit both families financially. How romantic." "When's the wedding?" I asked, already reaching for my calendar. Family obligations were tedious, but they were still obligations. Helena's smile faltered slightly. "Well, that's the thing, darling. It's going to be quite intimate. Very small. Just immediate family and close friends." Something cold settled in my stomach. "How small?" 40 guests, maybe 50 at most. You know how expensive these things can get, and Marcus and Isabel want to keep it elegant and refined. I nodded slowly, waiting for her to say the words. "I'm afraid there just isn't room for everyone we'd like to include," she continued, not quite meeting my eyes. "You understand, don't you? I knew you would. You're always so reasonable about these things." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Reasonable. That's what they'd always called me when they excluded me. Reasonable when I wasn't invited to family vacations, because there wasn't enough room in the rental house. Reasonable when I wasn't included in the Christmas card photos, because I wouldn't be back from college in time. Reasonable when my father walked Marcus down the aisle at his high school graduation to accept an award I'd helped him win, while I watched from the audience. "I see," I said finally, my voice perfectly level. "And what about Dad? What does he think about this decision?" Helena's laugh was like breaking glass. "Oh, you know your father. He leaves all the wedding planning to me. He's just happy Marcus found such a wonderful girl." My father. The man who had raised me single-handedly after my mother died when I was 8, who had taught me to be strong and independent, who had once told me I was the best thing that ever happened to him. The same man who had slowly faded into the background of my life after Helena and Marcus arrived, as if he'd been waiting 17 years for someone to give him permission to stop being my father. "Well," I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt, "I certainly wouldn't want to make things crowded." Helena looked relieved. "I knew you'd understand. You're such a successful, independent woman. You have your own life now." "I do indeed." I walked around my desk and extended my hand. "Thank you for coming by to tell me personally. That was thoughtful." She shook my hand, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was trying to figure out if I was being sarcastic, but my expression gave nothing away. Years of high-stakes negotiations had taught me to school my features into perfect neutrality. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, staring out at the city below. My assistant knocked once and retreated when I didn't answer. The sun was setting by the time I finally moved, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose that reminded me of my mother's favorite lipstick. I wasn't hurt. I was beyond hurt. Hurt was what you felt when someone you trusted disappointed you. This was something else entirely. A cold, crystalline clarity that settled over me like armor. They had finally done it. They had finally made their position, clear in a way that even I, with all my careful self-deception, couldn't rationalize away. I wasn't family. I was an inconvenience they'd been politely managing for 17 years. That night, I opened a bottle of wine, a 2015 Burgundy that I'd been saving for a special occasion, and began to plan. Not revenge, exactly. I've never been vindictive, by nature. But I am strategic, and I am very, very good at what I do. The first thing I did was research. Within 24 hours, I knew everything about Marcus and Isabel's wedding plans. The venue, Ashford Manor, a historic estate outside. East Briar that charged $20,000 just for the day rental. The guest list. 53 people, including Helena's book club friends, but not, apparently, the sister who had paid for Marcus to attend Barriston Prep after Dad's business hit a rough patch. More importantly, I learned about their honeymoon plans. They were planning 2 weeks at the Coral Bay Resort in the Bahamas, a luxury eco-resort that had just been featured in Travel and Leisure as one of the world's most exclusive getaways. The kind of place where celebrities went to disappear, where privacy was the ultimate luxury, and where a standard suite cost more per night than most people made in a month. It was perfect. I spent the next week making phone calls, pulling strings, and leveraging relationships I'd built over a decade in the PR business. The Coral Bay Resort wasn't officially for sale, but everything is for sale if you know the right people and have enough money. The owner was looking to diversify his portfolio, and I'd helped his daughter through a public scandal 2 years earlier. He owed me a favor, and I was ready to collect. The purchase took 3 weeks to finalize. $47 million for a slice of paradise that would become the most expensive lesson in consequences my family had ever received. During those 3 weeks, I went about my life as if nothing had changed. I met with clients, closed deals, attended charity galas, and had dinner with friends who asked about my family with the casual interest of people who assumed everything was fine. I told them about Marcus's upcoming wedding with a smile, mentioning how excited everyone was, how beautiful Isabel seemed, how these family milestones just made you appreciate what really mattered in life. I was quite good at it. Performance had always been one of my skills. The wedding was on a Saturday in late October. I spent that morning at a spa in Camden Point, getting a massage and a facial, treating myself to the kind of luxury that Helena would have called indulgent if she'd known about it. I had lunch at my favorite restaurant, a small French place, that didn't take reservations unless you were a regular, and then went home to work on a presentation for Monday's board meeting. I didn't think about Marcus walking down the aisle. I didn't think about Helena in whatever mother of the groom outfit she'd chosen, or about my father in his best suit, or about the speeches and the dancing and the cake cutting that I'd seen at dozens of other weddings, but would never see at my own brother's. Instead, I thought about the call I would make on Monday morning. The happy couple left for their honeymoon 3 days after the wedding. I knew because Helena posted approximately 75 photos on social media, documenting everything from the champagne toast on the private jet to their arrival at what she called absolute paradise. The photos showed exactly what I'd expected. Marcus looking slightly overwhelmed in the way he always did when faced with luxury he hadn't earned, and Isabel radiating the kind of confidence that came from never having wanted for anything in her life. They looked happy. I was glad for them, genuinely. I had never wished Marcus ill, despite everything. He was as much a victim of Helena's manipulations as I was, though he'd never realized it. The golden child never sees the cage, only the gilding. I waited until Thursday, giving them time to settle into their routine, to feel safe and pampered and utterly secure in their paradise. Then I made the call. Coral Bay Resort, this is Patricia speaking. How may I help you? Hello, Patricia. This is Vera Calloway. I'm the new owner of the resort. There was a pause. Oh, Ms. Calloway. We've been expecting your call. Congratulations on the acquisition. How can we assist you? I'd like to speak with your general manager about implementing some immediate changes to our guest services. Of course, let me transfer you to Mr. Rodriguez. Miguel Rodriguez had been running the Coral Bay Resort for 8 years. He was professional, discreet, and completely unfazed by the eccentricities of the ultra-wealthy. These qualities made him perfect for what I had in mind. Miss Calloway, he said, his voice warm but cautious. Welcome to the Coral Bay family. How can we make your transition as smooth as possible? I have some guests currently staying at the resort, I said. Marcus and Isabel Morrison. I believe they're in the Sunset Villa. Yes, the honeymoon suite. Lovely couple. They seem to be enjoying their stay. I'm sure they are. I'd like you to personally deliver a message to them. Of course. What would you like me to tell them? I had rehearsed this moment in my mind dozens of times, but sitting in my office with the phone pressed to my ear, I felt the weight of what I was about to do. Not regret. I was long past regret, but a kind of solemn finality, like signing a death certificate. Please tell them that Vera Calloway, the new owner of the resort, hopes they're enjoying their stay. Tell them that I wanted them to know their honeymoon is my gift to them, and that I hope they'll think of me every time they remember this trip. Miguel was quiet for a moment. Would you like me to prepare anything special for them? Champagne? Flowers? An upgraded dining experience? No, I said. Just the message. But Miguel, make sure you tell them exactly who I am. Vera Calloway, Marcus's sister. The one who wasn't invited to the wedding. Another pause. I see. And should I mention anything about their future stays? Will they be welcome to return? I smiled, though he couldn't see it. They're welcome to apply for reservations like any other guests. But I think you'll find that our booking schedule is quite full for the foreseeable future. That evening, I had dinner with 3 friends at a rooftop restaurant in Camden Point. We talked about work, about the upcoming holidays, about a mutual friend's recent divorce. Normal things. I laughed at their jokes, offered advice about their problems, and picked up the check with a generosity that had nothing to do with guilt, and everything to do with the simple pleasure of being able to do it. I was cutting my salmon when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk." Marcus I deleted it without responding and asked the server about the wine list. 20 minutes later, another text. "Please call me. I can explain." And then, "Helena told me what she said to you. I didn't know." And finally, "This is insane. You bought a fucking resort to make a point?" I turned my phone face down on the table and ordered dessert. The call started the next morning. First Marcus, then Helena, then my father, who hadn't called me in 3 months, but suddenly found my number when his son's honeymoon turned into a public humiliation. I let them all go to voicemail. Helena's message was predictably dramatic. "Vera, this is absolutely ridiculous. You're behaving like a child. Your father and I raised you better than this. Call me back immediately so we can discuss this like adults." Marcus was more direct. "What the hell, Vera? You're supposed to be the mature one. This is my honeymoon. My wife is mortified. How could you do this to us?" My father's message was only 8 words long. "Please call me back. We need to fix this. Fix this." As if the problem was my reaction, not their actions. As if 17 years of exclusion and dismissal could be erased with a phone call and an apology. I deleted all the messages and went to work. The story broke 3 days later. Someone, probably a resort employee with a smartphone and a TMZ contact, leaked the details of my hostile hospitality takeover, as one blogger called it. Within hours, it was everywhere. Social media, gossip sites, even a brief mention on the local news. The narrative wrote itself. Successful businesswoman buys luxury resort to send message to family who excluded her from wedding. The internet, predictably, was divided. Half the comments called me petty and vindictive, a spoiled, rich woman who couldn't handle being left out of a party. The other half declared me a hero, the patron saint of family scapegoats everywhere. Someone even started a hashtag, Vengeance Travels. I ignored all of it. I'd been managing public perception for over a decade, and I knew that engagement was the enemy of dignity. The story would burn bright and die fast, but only if I didn't feed it with responses or explanations. What I didn't ignore was the email that arrived on Friday afternoon, sent from Marcus's personal account to my business address. "Vera, I've been trying to reach you for days. I know you're getting my calls and choosing not to answer, which I guess I understand. But this has gone far enough. What you did was nuclear. Do you understand that? People are calling us. Isabel's parents are asking questions. Her mother, actually, asked if you were some kind of stalker. This was supposed to be the most perfect time of our lives, and now it's ruined. I get that you're hurt about the wedding. I really do. But you have to understand that it wasn't personal. Helena was trying to keep costs down, and we had to make hard choices about the guest list. It wasn't about you specifically. Can we please talk about this like adults? I'll fly. Back to Camden Point if I have to. This family feud isn't good for anyone. Marcus, I read the email 3 times before responding. When I finally replied, it was with the same professional courtesy I'd use for a client who had disappointed me. "Marcus, I appreciate you reaching out, though I'm curious about your timeline. You say you'll fly back to Camden Point if you have to discuss this, but you didn't find it necessary to include me in the actual family event we're discussing. You're right that your wedding was supposed to be perfect. I imagine it was. 43 people celebrating your happiness, toasting your future, sharing in what you described as the most important day of your life. I'm sure it was beautiful. I hope you and Isabel enjoy the rest of your stay at my resort. Please don't feel obligated to cut your honeymoon short on my account. I would hate for you to sacrifice your perfect vacation for a conversation with someone who apparently doesn't qualify as family when it matters. Best regards, Vera P.S." It's not a feud when only one side is fighting. The phone calls stopped after that. Not because they'd given up, but because they'd finally understood what I'd been trying to tell them for years. I didn't need their permission to exist, their approval to succeed, or their inclusion to thrive. But the real revelation came 2 weeks later, when Marcus and Isabel returned from their honeymoon, and the full scope of my purchase became clear to them. I hadn't just bought the resort to embarrass them for a week. I'd bought it because I could. Because I had built something from nothing, while they were living off family money and connections. Because I had turned myself into the kind of person who could drop $47 million to make a point. And they were still the kind of people who needed Daddy to co-sign their mortgage. The Coral Bay Resort became my retirement project. I installed a new management team, implemented sustainable practices that doubled its profile in travel magazines, and turned it into the most exclusive eco-luxury destination in the Caribbean. I visited 4 times a year, usually bringing friends, or clients who appreciated the irony of conducting business deals on a property I'd bought to settle a family score. I never saw Marcus or Isabel there again, though I heard they tried to book a return trip for their first anniversary. My general manager, Miguel, handled that request personally, informing them that unfortunately, the resort was fully booked for the next 18 months. He suggested they might enjoy the Marriott down the beach. The family reconciliation everyone expected never came. Helena sent a Christmas card that year with a handwritten note. "We miss you, and we hope you'll consider joining us for the holidays." I sent back a donation receipt showing I'd given the cost of their wedding to a charity for children who'd lost parents. The note said, "Merry Christmas. I spent the holidays with people who actually want me there. My father called once, 6 months after the honeymoon incident." I was in my office, reviewing contracts, when Lydia buzzed through that he was on line 1. I stared at the blinking light for a full minute before picking up. "Hi, Dad," Vera. His voice sounded older, tired. "How are you?" "I'm well, busy, but well. How are you?" I'm not good, sweetheart. I think I've made some mistakes." Sweetheart. He hadn't called me that since I was 15. "What kind of mistakes?" I asked, though I already knew. "I let Helena make decisions that weren't hers to make. I stood by while she pushed you away. I thought I was keeping the peace, but I was just being a coward." I closed my eyes. This was the conversation I'd imagined having with him for years, the apology I'd rehearsed accepting in my head. But sitting there, listening to his voice crack with what sounded like genuine regret, I felt nothing but a vast, empty tiredness. "Why are you calling me now?" I asked. "Because I miss my daughter. Because I'm proud of what you've built and ashamed that I haven't told you that. Because I want to fix this before it's too late." Too late for what? For us. For this family. I was quiet for a long time, watching the city move below my window. Traffic flowing like blood through arteries, people rushing toward destinations I'd never know, lives intersecting and separating in patterns too complex to map. "Dad," I said finally, "do you know what I do for a living?" "You run a PR company, a successful one. I fix things that are broken. I take situations that seem impossible and I find ways to make them work. I've saved marriages, careers, entire companies. I'm very good at it. I know you are. But I can't fix this. Not because I don't have the skills, but because some things aren't broken. They're just finished." The silence stretched between us like a bridge neither of us was willing to cross. "I love you," he said, and I could hear tears in his voice. "I've always loved you." "I know," I said. "But love isn't enough when it comes with conditions." After I hung up, I sat in my office until the sun set, and the city lights began to twinkle like stars fallen to earth. My assistant had left hours ago, and the building was quiet except for the hum of ventilation and the distant sound of traffic far below. I thought about the story I'd told myself for so many years. That I was the strong one, the independent one, the one who didn't need anyone. I thought about the family I'd been born into and the family I'd chosen, my friends, my colleagues, the people who showed up for me without being asked and without expecting anything in return. Most of all, I thought about the woman I'd become, someone who could buy a resort on principle, who could build an empire from nothing, who could walk away from people who didn't value her presence and never look back. It had been expensive, this lesson in letting go. But some educations are worth any price. 6 months later, I sold Silverline Media to a consortium of investors for more money than I'd ever imagined having. I kept a small stake in a consulting role, but I was done with the daily grind of managing other people's crises. I had my own life to live. I moved to a villa in Tuscany, not running away, just running toward something better. I started a small marketing consultancy that worked exclusively with sustainable businesses and social entrepreneurs. I learned to paint, badly, but enthusiastically. I adopted a dog named Artemis, who didn't care about my family history and loved me unconditionally for the simple crime of existing. The Coral Bay Resort continued to thrive under its new management, and I continued to visit it regularly. Not because I needed to remind myself of my victory, but because I'd genuinely fallen in love with the place. It was peaceful there, surrounded by turquoise water and white sand, far from the complications of family expectations and the weight of old wounds. I was sitting on the beach there last month, reading a book about Renaissance art and watching Artemis chase crabs, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Vera. This is Isabel Morrison Calloway. I hope it's okay that I'm contacting you. I got your number from your old assistant." I stared at the message for a moment, then put my phone away without responding. Some chapters, once closed, should stay that way. But she texted again an hour later. "I just wanted you to know that Marcus and I are getting divorced. It's been a long time coming, but the honeymoon thing was the beginning of the end. Not because of what you did, but because of how everyone reacted to it. And then, you were right about them. About all of them. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." This time, I responded, "I'm sorry to hear about your divorce. I hope you find peace in whatever comes next." Her reply came immediately. "Thank you. And thank you for showing me what it looks like when someone refuses to accept less than they deserve." I smiled at that, closing my phone and returning to my book. Artemis had given up on the crabs and was napping in the shade of my beach chair, her fur warm against my leg. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of coral and gold that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with this place. Tomorrow I would fly back to Tuscany, back to my villa with its olive groves and its view of rolling hills that stretched to the horizon. I would work in my garden, paint terrible watercolors of the landscape, and have dinner with my neighbors who knew nothing about my family drama and cared only that I made excellent risotto and always brought good wine to potluck dinners. It was a small life, by some measures. Certainly smaller than the one I'd built in Camden Point, with its corner offices and client lists and constant motion. But it was mine, completely and utterly mine, in a way that nothing had ever been before. Sometimes, people ask me if I regret buying the resort, if I think the $47 million could have been better spent on something more practical, more traditionally philanthropic. They want to know if I feel guilty about what some people still call my petty revenge. I always tell them the same thing. The best money I ever spent was the money that taught me the difference between being alone and being lonely. The Coral Bay Resort wasn't revenge. It was education. It was the tuition I paid for a masterclass in self-worth, taught by the most expensive professors in the world, the people who claimed to love me but somehow forgot to show up when it mattered. These days, I sleep well at night. I wake up in a bed I chose, in a house I bought, in a life I designed from scratch according to my own specifications. I have friends who call me on my birthday, who remember how I like my coffee, who include me not because they have to, but because they want to. I have a family now, one I chose, one that chose me back. It's smaller than the one I was born into, but it's infinitely stronger. And every morning when I wake up and look out at the Tuscan countryside, I remember that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. Sometimes it's buying a resort and living extraordinarily well, but mostly, it's just living authentically, surrounded by people who see your value and never make you prove it twice. What's your story of family betrayal and comeback? Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity? Share your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes the best revenge is knowing you're not alone. And if you enjoyed this story of strategic satisfaction and well-deserved success, don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Treats for more tales of people who refuse to accept less than they deserved.